Hello everyone, my name is Akal and I am a somatic therapist. If you'd like to find out a little bit more about the work I do, you can check out the website I have posted down below the video. Also down below the video is the website for your natal chart. The natal chart's actually pretty important when you're coming to this sort of thing. Actually, I don't even know how you would have come to this point of even looking at the nakshatras without having some previous knowledge of your natal chart. However, if you would like to find out what your nakshatras are, you can go ahead and follow that particular website, go to that website rather, and look at your sun, your moon, and your ascendant specifically. Purva Bhadrapada. This is really weird. Weird's a bad term. This nakshatra was so incredibly trippy. It's very heady. It's very trippy. So let me go ahead and get the characteristics of, I guess, the personification of these energies out of the way, and then I'll go into some of the more sort of descriptive, or the symbols rather, and when we get to the god in particular with this nakshatra, it's like an acid trip. So some of the characteristics of this particular nakshatra. Here's a good phrase I actually saw that I thought characterized things really well. It said, "Beaten paths are for beaten people." So that phrase, I feel, it epitomizes Purva Bhadrapada in a lot of ways. Beaten paths are for beaten people. So this implies a lot of originality, independent, self-reliant, highly philosophical. This is a Brahman path, or a Brahman placement, meaning, again, kind of the intellectual class. So let's see what else. So rebellious. That's another huge one. Stand on one's own feet. Let's see. Basically the ability to stand on one's own feet without concern for judgment from the world. So there's an isolating principle that happens with these folks. And this isolating principle I'll get to in a moment. But essentially, it's because they're mission-oriented. Not in the same sense as some of the other nakshatras that have dharmic paths are. This path is an artha path, meaning directed action. So let me go ahead and read some other characteristics here. So other characteristics are, self-centered. Well, again, these are the negative ones. So self-centered, manic, antisocial. On the positive side, we have passionate. Just passionate, very mission-oriented, very martyr-like. Some other kind of negative connotations would be harsh words, greediness, and this one I thought was really interesting is a fascination for the ecstasy of evil and the darker side of life. And some associations in terms of the energies that transform these people are pains, falls, injury, accidents, and attacks. So pains, falls, injuries, accidents, and attacks. Now, the reason I even mentioned that there's, possible calamities affecting these individuals, and there are calamities essentially affecting all the nakshatras, again, because everything is about spiritual transformation, and on some level, life has to challenge us. Life has to challenge us to I guess, strive. Life has to challenge us to overcome. This sign has a lot of inner strength. Like I said, it's a really intense energy. So let's go ahead and look at the gunas real quick. So the gunas, what we have here is we have sattva and rajasic. So we have sattvic energy and rajasic energy. So essentially the sattvic and this rajasic energy, how they combine is, again, we're looking at neutral mind and activity, which is Jupiter. So Jupiter is expansive, and it looks to integrate or universalize. It's a spiritual planet. Jupiter and Saturn are both spiritual planets. People don't think of Saturn as a spiritual planet, but it is. And this nakshatra falls under Aquarius, primarily 3/4 of it, and 1/4 of it falls under Pisces, which is once again historically ruled by Jupiter. So Jupiter energy sometimes is very missionary-like. It's directed towards religious principles and spirituality and things of that nature. But again, think about expansion and integration and the movement towards unifying principles, because that's what this is all about. These are universalizing people. These are people that are here to essentially, I thought this was really interesting, is so Yogi Bhajan, when he lines up the first two gunas, and again, this is at its base level sattvic, meaning they're and again, this is the whole third of the zodiac. The whole latter third of the zodiac has sattvic as its base impulse. And so sattva and sattva are basically Mercury. Yogi Bhajan calls it teacher. And it's kind of an attitude, or a kind of a deep underlining energy in some way that's being expressed. And so why I thought Mercury was interesting is because one of the, I guess, symbols, or I guess statements that can be made about Purva Bhadrapada, it's a lot, Purva Bhadrapada, is that it is two-faced. And I thought two-faced, I was like, I was like, two-faced in modern times is, kind of a negative thing, where we say, oh, the person is two-faced, meaning they're lying or they're cheats. That's not the case here necessarily. I mean, obviously, if these folks are operating, I guess, from the material realm, and they're stuck and they're mired, they're going to end up creating situations which lead them to this negative result of sorrow and anguish. And that comes in a lot of ways from that two-facedness. So what it two-faced means when we're talking about a sort of higher expression, meaning these folks have their mission. Their mission has been given to them. They know what their mission is. They're heading down that particular path. What Mercury does for them on a deep level in this particular case, and again, keep in mind that Mercury is neutral. It's very neuter. We're talking about sattvic and sattvic energy here. So what that basically means is that the ability to see both sides at all times. The ability to look one way and then look another. And again, this is a wonderful thing in terms of an energy that allows an individual to transform, because they don't get stuck into a particular perception. But again, something else that needs to be said is these are very idealistic people. So idealism sometimes can lead to a bit of obstinance. And again, if they are functioning in a negative way, the obstinance rises from the need to cling very tightly to an ideal. So now if they stay loose and flexible and they roll with life, then that idealism to them is kind of, it is the result of having looked at both sides. Again, these are Brahmins, intellectual class. So they're looking at both sides to any sort of argument or discussion. And I think it was the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama said this, I guess, in the early 2000s. Don't quote me in terms of the time. But in the early 2000s, he was in the U.S., and I remember watching a video where they asked him, what does humanity need going forward? These are very future-oriented people. That's one other thing I should say. So what does humanity need going forward? Well, humanity needs going forward, according to the Dalai Lama, is discernment. Because right now we are absolutely crushed with the amount of knowledge and information that's out there, the internet, etc. So discernment is what one needs. And so these folks are very good at discernment. They can look at something one way, and they can look at another way. They can basically be their own devil's advocate. So, and again, there's just such interesting energy here. So let me go ahead and we'll talk about, let's talk about the primary impulse and then the God. So the primary impulse of these folks is what they call cosmic stability. And again, because the underlying energies here is a lot of sattvic energy, and which always implies balance and harmony. So cosmic stability. Oh, it's interesting. The God. we'll go ahead and talk about the god. Then this is one of the most difficult gods that I've tried to wrap my head around, because they describe this god as having no form. It's formless, motionless, and speechless. And that's like, huh? Because it almost like implies that it doesn't exist. But it does exist. But it just doesn't have form, motion, or speech. And the god is, I'll probably mispronounce this. So it's Aja, A-J-A, Ekapada. And it's like a one-footed goat that has one eye or something like that. I guess it's interesting, like the goat reference is goats are kind of like, they just take care of themselves. And again, a lot of the energy of Purva Bhadrapada is that self-reliance. But again, negatively expressed, or when it's mired in material things, self-reliance is self-centeredness. So Aja Ekapada is... All right, so we're going to talk about infinity. Let's talk about the infinity symbol. So I like to think of the infinity symbol as this constant and continuous flow of energy which unites heaven and earth. Somebody once told me that's kind of like a hierophant, like in tarot. So this infinity, this energy that's always sort of moving between heaven and earth is sort of the realm or the domain of Aja Ekapada. Ekapada. Thank you. And then another symbol of Aja Ekapada, which interestingly was a unicorn. I didn't quite dig into that one too much, but sort of interesting. So now Aja Ekapada, again, having no form and no motion or any sort of tangible manifestation, what is that? So there's another god associated with this, which is called, I believe it's Rohit, which is R-O-H-I-T. Let me make sure I got that correct. So yeah, Rohit is, it's etheric in nature, meaning it's kind of like creation as a thought. It's still in the ethers. It has no manifestation whatsoever. So Aja Ekapada is kind of an overlay over Rohit in some ways. And so what Aja Ekapada does is it doesn't supply the structure, it supplies the energy. So Aja Ekapada is also sometimes described as being like the sun, meaning it's the, I guess in summation, it is the vehicle for energy, or in this particular case, when we're talking about energy, we're talking about creative force, we're talking about fire, or Agni. So this fire, the Agni, it's essentially what pushes things into motion. It is the positive charge, the positive influence that gets the ball rolling. So think about it maybe as a spark. So Aja Ekapada is the point at which heaven and earth, I guess heaven to the earth, is anchored. So it provides the conduit, that energy through which energy flows between the heavens and earth, providing adhesion. Whew, I told you this is a heavy one. Like I said, I still, as I've pondered this for a few hours, I still haven't been able to entirely put it together. So what Aja Ekapada is it's perceived as motionless, but the reality is that it's motion that is existing so quickly and so fast that it appears motionless. So it's the junction point of that figure eight in infinity. That's how I see it. It's the point, the convergence point, that ultimately is binding either sides between heavens and earth. And again, that energy is like the sun. So some of the characteristics associated with this are things like that come from this highly active nature, which are anger, and again, so impetuous, and again, very, very self-reliant and self-driven. So like I said, it's very intense energy, and these folks, like I said, if they're operating negatively, they end up creating a lot of chaos in their wake, which leads to anguish and sorrow. So kind of like another way to sort of look at this, and again, perceiving it through the lens of the gunas. So sattvic, rajasic. So we've got a lot of sort of balance and harmony tendencies, and then this rajasic energy, which is pouring out into life. So I would say, in a lot of ways, these folks take a certain amount of time to bloom. And what I mean by that is that life's lessons have to happen. They have to get beaten down a little bit in order to, I guess, sharpen their discernment skills, to sharpen that sort of mercurial tendency. Now, that mercurial tendency, like I said, it leads to that sort of two-faced disposition, that sort of, which can be sort of negative, but again, it's ultimately, as I perceive it, it's about discernment. So something else I want to kind of talk about as it relates to, two more points I'm going to bring up. One is there's another god that's associated with this, which is Rudra. The reason that Rudra is associated with this, and you'll recognize Rudra as a god that's associated with Ardra, and it's the god of destruction. Now, why Rudra is associated with this one has to do with, again, that sort of sun-like energy, that sort of intense. Again, these folks generically are the vehicle for the expression of the sun-like energy, or the expression of Agni, or fire. So again, that can cause a lot of chaos. And so some words that you might see associated with this particular sign are fire, heat, combustion, and catalytic activities. So something else to kind of think about is, I thought the padas, or the four divisions within this nakshatra, were really interesting. So the four padas are, I believe it's Mars, Venus, Mercury, and finally the moon. So those four divisions are all quick-moving planets. So transformation happens very quickly here. In fact, this is kind of like, in a lot of ways, energy that is constantly changing. And so again, you see this two-faced nature. You see this quick-moving, fast energy. You're getting a theme here. This is a highly charged placement, so which can result, if they are not operating authentically, as anxiety. Just a ton of nervous energy. So with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and show you how I connected Purva Bhadrapada with projection 26, or the expert. All right, here we have Yogi Bhajan's book, The Mind. And in the back of this book, we have a chart. So this chart is the universal mind. And it's essentially showing the precipitation of the elements from source. And it becomes progressively more dense. So we're going from ether, air, fire, water, and earth. So on the impersonal mind level, or the sort of deep vibe, we have sattva, or buddhi. So sattva, sattvic energy, once again, is balance and harmony as the foundational level for these folks. Then we follow this down to the neutral mind, which was their secondary level. And then finally, we have positive mind, which is on the tertiary level, which is 26, the expert. Then what we do is we move into the book, into the meditation section of the book. So again, we have sattva, neutral mind, and positive energy. And here we have projection 26, the expert. A little bit blah, blah, blah. And here's the exercise. And I'll go ahead and show you how to do this practice in the next segment. All right, so projection 26, the expert. This is the exercise connected with Purva Bhadrapada. A couple things to think about before we get into this exercise is, again, remembering that this nakshatra, its primary function is the universalizing of ideas, universalizing of, I guess, knowledge and information. So they have a highly intellectual mind that can bring in a lot of content, a lot of information. And so essentially what that means is that they can get a lot of different information, and they try to, again, from very complex systems, and they can channel it into a singular focus. So what this requires is steadiness in order for the individual to go deep, because they have to be able to go deep in order to say, hey, this system over here and that system over there are somehow related, and you may not be able to see it if your mind is bouncing all over the place. So what this particular exercise does, and it's meant to be done for 62 minutes. I think this is like the only exercise in this entire book which says 62 minutes. Again, because there's so much nervous energy with this placement, so much active, attaching energy. So this, like I said, this practice will help the natives of this particular nakshatra to channel that energy and to kind of balance it and stabilize it, and it'll help with the discernment skills then, and also it'll help them sort of, like I said, bring unity to these concepts that are going through their, I guess, washing through their awareness. Something else it might do is it'll prevent accidents. A lot of accidents with a lot of nervous energy. Anytime you see a lot of nervous energy, you see this propensity to do things too quickly, so that'll help slow these individuals down as well. So this particular meditation, I gotta admit though, I've avoided this one for a long time. I've done it on and off at various points in my life, or at least in the last 15 years since I've been doing Kundalini Yoga, but I generally avoid this one because it's not super simple. It's not easy. It requires a great deal of focus. It requires a great deal of commitment. So this is called and I'll mispronounce it, no doubt, but it's Tershul, Trishula Kriya. I think another term for this that I saw in a different book is the Thunderbolt of Shiva. What it requires is that your hands are placed like so. So it's right over left. Thumbs are extended straight. And you're going to hold it not directly down, but up 10 degrees higher than your elbows. So 10 degrees higher than the elbows. The elbows are locked at the ribs. So elbows at the ribs, right over left, thumbs extended. Now, the eyes, or the dristi, is pretty simple. You're just going to close your eyes. And what you want to do is you want to keep your eyes or your focus directly forward. And it's as if you were looking out closed eyelids. Again, eyes are closed, eyes looking direct forward, even though they're closed. So again, this will make sense when I get to the rest of the explanation here. So the reason for the eyes being closed and the eyeballs being directly forward is because what we're attempting to do here is to trigger the perception of light. Think about the times where you've pressed on your eyelids. In fact, if you press on your eyeballs a little bit, you may notice you'll create like patterns or geometry, but again, what we're talking about is light. So you can perceive this if you press down on your eyeballs. So I kind of think that that's what this exercise is sort of doing by keeping the eyeballs forward but the eyelids closed. Because what we're doing here is we're going to be inhaling, retaining the breath for as long as possible. Again, there's no amount of time you're supposed to be doing it. I mean, ideally, you're going to have your breath retentions in and your breath retentions out being equivalent, ideally. However, what really is important here is that you're reciting a mental mantra while you're retaining the breath. So this is what you're going to do. So once again, right over left, thumbs extended straight, eyes closed, eyeballs forward, looking out closed eyelids. You're going to inhale, retain the breath. And once you retain the breath, inhale and retain the breath, you're going to pull your navel point. Again, you're going to pull your belt line in. So that's the area about 2 to 3 inches below the navel. Again, arms are up, hands are up above 10 degrees above the elbows. And once the navel point is pulled in, you're going to mentally recite Har Har Waheguru. Again, mentally reciting Har Har Waheguru. That's H-A-R, H-A-R, W-H-A, H-A-Y, Guru, G-U-R-O-O. So, Har Har Waheguru, you're going to mentally recite as many times as possible with the breath retained and the navel point pulled in. Then what you're going to do is you're going to exhale. And as you're exhaling, you're going to pull Mula Bandha or root lock. So you're going to contract your anus, your perineum, your genitals, and you're going to continue pulling in that belt line inward and upward towards your spine. Once you have root lock pulled firmly, everything's contracted and pulled up, breath is out completely. Once again, Har Har Waheguru. Now here's a nuance. So again, that sort of transition, as the breath is retained, as your breath is held in, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be perceiving light accumulating around your hands. So light is accumulating around the hands. And then as you're exhaling, it's like you're shooting light out your fingertips. So again, let me repeat that. So you're going to inhale, retain the breath, pull in the navel, Har Har Waheguru, Har Har Waheguru, mentally recited, all while light is accumulating around your hands. As you exhale, you're pulling root lock. It's like you're shooting light out of the fingertips. And again, this exercise says do it for 62 minutes. Be realistic. You know your capacity. Sometimes doing something for too long actually will work against you. Those of us who tend to be very disciplined, kind of tightly wound, be gentle. Give yourself an opportunity to sort of ease into this practice. And I think that's all I really want to kind of mention here. Again, it's a really rewarding practice if you can commit to it. I've done it, like I said, maybe half dozen times, in the last 15 years. Again, I've avoided this exercise for whatever reasons. So with all that said, I appreciate you tuning into this video, and hey, have a great day.